There's a saying that the Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win in sports. For Canada, having a Canadian team win the Cup means everything. The last Canadian team to come close to winning the Stanley Cup was the Vancouver Canucks in 2011. After having a dominant regular season, the passion and hope from the fans fueled into heartbreak and despair.
The scene just outside our CBC Vancouver studios 10 years ago this week. For the second time in 17 years, the Canucks lost in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. And for the second time, downtown was engulfed in a riot.
It was the best team to never win a Stanley Cup. Since then, the Canucks have had their share of misfortune, only making the playoffs twice over the span of a decade, being a middling team at the best. However, this year, they've completely flipped the script. As of the All-Star break, the Canucks are first place in the NHL, tied with none other than the Boston Bruins. Playoffs seem certain for Canucks fans come April for only the second time in nearly a decade. The acquisition of yet another player, Elias Lindholm, is a sign that the organization is willing to go all out this year, meaning they will be contenders for the prize that they've never won, the Stanley Cup. The success of the team won't only make the fans happy, but seeing the trends of cities that have won Stanley Cups over the past few years, like St. Louis in 2019, who have had estimates of over $50 million of economic benefits during the Cup run and years after the victory, meaning the success of the Canucks will translate to real tangible economic benefits to the city of Vancouver. So will Vancouver reap the rewards of its success this year, making a deep playoff run to contend for the Cup, or will history repeat itself?
Hello everyone, and welcome back to an investment series. And today we're going to be talking about something that Vancouver takes a lot of pride in, I would say. And so the Vancouver Canucks, they've been in the NHL for like 50 years and they've had their share of misfortunes, their victories, moral victories, but this year in particular, they've went from a pretty bad team last year to being first in the NHL.
We all know the success story on the ice, but does it actually translate to bringing economic benefits to Vancouver?
Yeah, I mean, the Canucks are doing fantastic this season. I mean, it was definitely a surprise for all the fans. And because of that, I think it's pulled a lot of fans to be passionate about hockey once again, and especially those living in Vancouver who can come and see the games and support the Canucks.
I've heard from other people and I've seen on news that it's true. Like Vancouver is a very hockey-based area. No matter how much you look at it, there's a lot of competition. Like I play some ice hockey myself. I know that it's really, really competitive. Even like from the NHL standpoint, there's like a lot of players. For example, Bedard grew up here, so like it's like just proves how important hockey-based that this community was. Despite being all of that, Vancouver wasn't doing that great in the past couple of years.
This year, I think, being first in the NHL means that they're going to make the postseason. And for people who don't really watch hockey, the postseason is basically the most intense month of hockey played in the whole year. It's where the Stanley Cup is being decided. It's deciding how much revenue in each team gets, how happy the fans are, how unhappy the fans are. Vancouver had its share of, again, misfortunes over the history. And obviously, restaurants and pubs in a hockey city like Vancouver earn a lot of revenue. And so study shows that each and every playoff game brings about $1 million to the local economy, with pubs and restaurants especially.
According to a study from Scotiabank and Canadian Tire, hockey contributes $2.6 billion to Canadian communities each year, with more than 50% being attributed to hockey-related tourism. As a result, transportation industries are also expected to benefit during the Stanley Cup playoffs. Specifically, air transportation and public transportation industries will likely prosper the most from the influx of foot traffic generated due to the playoffs. Air traffic is expected to endure more demand as players and fans must be transported to and from arenas via planes. For diehard fans, this means flying back and forth from cities to catch the team's away games in other cities.
I think like the Canucks games have like a large impact on the city's economy due to it probably driving people from maybe from other cities. Some people might fly in just to see their favorite players, so it creates more demand for travel and additionally like uh, things like restaurants, pubs, and also maybe local stores. Maybe they want a souvenir or maybe they want a jersey or things like that.
Yeah, I think the comment about how it increases demand for travel in general is also quite important. But in other leagues, for example, the Canadian Football League, there is actually a very clear indication that it actually increases overall holiday as well in a particular area. For example, just last year, most of the fans that went to watch the Canadian Football League's games, right, they would actually make it a 4 day, maybe even 5 day vacation. Like up to 60% of the people that came in turned it not just to watch a football game, but also to actually enjoy the city and go around it, right? And of course, Vancouver is well known for as a tourist industry and having a really great tourist city.
And this also brings added benefits to other cities. For example, if again, I won't jinx it. If it's Boston and Vancouver right now in the finals, Vancouver, like I mean, there would be Vancouver like residents of Vancouver who would be flying to Boston to catch the games, and vice versa. Which I mean, if there's a riot going on again, might not be the best, might not be the safest thing to do.
Yeah, so like, talking from a little bit, no, not really, it's like secondhand experience. I've had some people I know go into all like going to like maybe like even like just across Canada or maybe down to the US just to see a couple hockey games, or maybe they want to like, just go there for a good time. And usually even those one or two games, right, they usually go for like an extended period of time, usually like, up to a week even, and then what do they do in their extra time? They usually do go around that area, you don't just stay in the hotel room all day. I mean, maybe that's the mindset of the generation now, but I'm pretty sure that like, maybe perhaps the older generation, or even definitely some of us younger ones would want to go out, want to do some other extracurriculars, where get her hours.
Yeah, and not to mention, obviously, the Canucks doing well, any sport team doing well will mean more fans, right? This whole bandwagon mindset in sports that if a team does well, a lot of new fans are going to be hooked into the industry, hooked into the sport, and obviously inspiring the younger generation to maybe play hockey, maybe play some sports and see themselves on the big screen, right? And so another thing I noticed was that I actually went to Canucks game just this past week against Columbus. It was a great game. The tickets were quite expensive.
So why the price? Why so expensive? Well, the answer lies in the team's success this season. It's just been incredible to see that the Canucks are at the top of the league out of all the possible teams out there in the AHL. And the Canucks, frankly, have just not been historically associated with this winning culture. So I think it's really sensationalizing for the fans to see that. And obviously they'll be enthusiastic and be willing to put in that money to see them play, right? And so we saw last year and the year before that they were obviously like regularly offering out discounts because they couldn't fill the arenas. And this year is a completely different story. They're even jacking up the prices, and people are going to come. They could still expect fully seated arenas in spite of how much prices have just risen.
And so this especially happens in the postseason where like people are packed, people go on the streets, even at Vancouver. Obviously, there's going to be positive and negative externalities with that. And that all depends on how the Canucks do. The results of one sports game can affect all of that. Yeah. And also, if we take a look at all the recent cities that have won Stanley Cups, Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis in the past few years, right? And then they've actually seen overall rise in their economy over the span of like 2 or 3 years to kind of like reap the rewards that they got by winning a Stanley Cup.
I was going to definitely mention that. Yeah, probably like maybe a good assumption to make would be like lots of people who would be spending more, people are happier, like hockey fans and everything. I think that's definitely a plausible thing of happening, especially here in Vancouver, because we mentioned before that really hockey based. So there's gonna be if I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna jinx it, but if something great were to happen, it would I would say it would quite boost the economy in terms of just consumerism around.
If a city wins the Stanley Cup in like the NHL, then not only would the people in that city, they might spend more, of course, but they might also work harder. That could also
Motivation.
they might be motivated to work more. While if they didn't win, then they might be less motivated, and their work would be worse.
All of this encompasses the idea of civic pride, the feeling of unity and togetherness for the city. Successful sports teams have exemplified this in the past. The cycle of benefits then goes back around to creating more economic benefit for the city.
Yeah, so like especially in terms of again about that intangible thing, that kind of feeling, that team spirit kind of thing. It's always a great thing when teams are winning. Our team Vancouver's winning. Everything is great about them that happens. But if we're like sometimes especially like reference to 2011, if there's if we're that close, and then that kind of like that hope kind of like disappears, it causes the opposite reaction. So like especially like in terms of instead of rather than benefiting, you might even cause damages instead. So like during that 2011 rioting, the damages were over like around 10 million.
Around 10 million.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's some very severe, like
Yes.
I'd say, consequences that I wouldn't blame it completely on the people, because again, it's that team spirit. It's the thing. It's just what happens. It's something that that's inevitable, kind of.
Okay, so so hockey has been a source of national pride for Canada, and it's very important to like Canadian culture and every aspect of life, I suppose. Like it is like a primary source of entertainment for Canada. I believe hockey is one of the biggest sports in Canada. Then it brings in tons of revenue, both direct and indirect, through restaurants, clubs, and tourism industries. And I believe that overall, the Canucks, and like even if they win and lose, I believe that them winning the games or them having good performances in the games have contributed more positively to the economy than the unfortunate thing that happened in 2011.
And so whether they win or lose, Canucks fans will still, I guess, have that sense of passion, because our franchise has been quite, I guess, not the most fortunate, I would say, out of the other ones. For example, Vegas won their cup in like 6 years. This is our 55th, 54th year?
When the puck drops in Rogers Arena in April, we can only hope the hockey gods will script a different ending. One that sees the Stanley Cup finally finding its home in Vancouver. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.